So, it's been, interesting 2 weeks, huh? There's been a lot of news circulating around, a lot of discussion. I was kind of surprised seeing this get as much discussion as it did initially. Not necessarily because animation's an underappreciated medium and no one respects it, but because I'm used to seeing shit like this under the cover of darkness. It's just rumors and secrets and hearsay and whispers on the wind. Nothing of this caliber that I can remember has been left out for public consumption at least in a while. And something like this is definitely primed for proper discourse. If you clicked on this video, you probably have some idea of what's been going on. Obviously, the streaming worms are pretty hype. The tourney arc is bumping. Netflix's growth has been slowing down a bit. You know, they're kind of getting caught up in the midst of everything. It's been revealed recently that within the first quarter of this year, they've actually lost 200,000 subscribers, which, compared to the 200 million or so that they still have, it seems kind of negligible. But for them, it was apparently a cataclysmic sign of the apocalypse coming to swallow up their whole company. So they didn't start making long-term plans for growth or start cost-cutting efficiently. They just started slashing shit in half. And one of the first things to go was basically half of the slate Netflix Animation has been working on. Most original concepts, especially those that were regular series, those got cut. A lot of movies got cut too. You thought you were getting that Bone movie? Haha, well, nah. You know, that's what you thought? That's what you thought. Sit in the corner and think about how stupid you've been being. There's a fair amount of prominent creators that are sounding off on this too. People that you would have expected to have had shows by now that were going to finally be fulfilled by Netflix, and then all of a sudden they pull this wacky bullshit. It's been a huge shitstorm for the past couple of weeks, and it's not hard to see why. See, obviously it's good for Netflix to look to the future and try to plan ahead, especially since Disney and Warner Brothers are playing an endless game of chicken in the streaming wars. But they made a mad dash to try to cut their budgets immediately, when they could have been doing that for years and years. It's been a meme forever that Netflix has more money than they do sense. They give a lot of projects exorbitant budgets. Doesn't matter if they're going to be uber popular or just indie works. The same would apply for animation. And in the midst of their neurotic haze, they just decided to throw everything out. It'd just be easier to try and play damage control later, I suppose, rather than try to deal with these issues in the present. So they scrapped everything. They scrapped everything, basically, that would qualify as original content. They started leaning back into co-productions, acquisitions, outsourcing especially. They had a whole building made specifically for the animation units that is probably just gonna lay dormant for a minute, because most of the people that were going to be occupying it are now out of a job. They're going to rely on other studios to produce these shows. It might not even be theirs. You know, they're probably licensed. They are probably going to go back into the DreamWorks hole or something like that and just pump out 24 animated series based on, I don't know, real FX movies? I don't know. There's plenty of good movie ideas that are still being made as far as we know. Nimona was recently saved by Netflix as far as I can tell, but a lot of good shit got thrown out, and people are not too happy about that. Part of the reason why this had blown up as much as it did was because this had actually been happening for a while. There's been rumblings that something like this was going to occur, probably dating back to like early February, maybe even January. Industry people doomsaying on Twitter at 3 a.m, we're going back to the 80s. It's going to be terrible for the next 5-10 years or so. But it's also attributed to the fact that these mavericks over here decided to completely disseminate the whole story and published an article when this all went public, which metastasized into a whole other beast of burden. But the teal deer is basically Netflix is starting to slip. They panicked. They started slashing all their budgets in half. Animation got the sack. A lot of original content is down the shitter. We see no signs of it coming back anytime soon. There's chaos in the streets. But what does this all mean, right? Netflix has actually been a pretty ardent supporter of original animation the past decade or so. They've been known for bringing forth some of the most revered and well-respected cartoons of the last 10, 15 years or so. Can't be 15, it hasn't been that long. But they've been making a lot of stuff. They've been making a lot of cool stuff that varies from size or genre or feeling. They've been kind of crushing it. And for the foreseeable future, a lot of that is not going to be with us. They're not going to carry the same energy they have been. Now, depending on how the other main producers of animation may fjord the rest of this year, it might do something to the market. There are fewer opportunities out there for certain things to be brought forth. The reliance on outsourcing may help out the smaller studios, but generally speaking, for the creatives, this is a tremendous loss. I'm doubting this will lead to any seismic shifts industry side, because the main takeaway that everyone got from the story is Netflix is bad with money. They've always been bad with money, and they will probably continue on that path for a minute. They're still figuring it out. But I think there's a decent chance that the other main providers of content are going to take notice, and they might step up their involvement and their output to try to fill that hole that Netflix is now leaving. Disney and Warner have already been there for a while. Prime Video and Apple Plus have actually been pretty steady supporters of animation for a minute. They've produced quite a few smaller scale projects, but they've been pretty decent. A lot of them are made for preschoolers, so I don't expect you to know about them really, but they seem to be committed to this shit at least. I can give them props for that. So other than maybe a slight increase of any of the streaming services trying to offer more 6 to 11 content, I don't know if we'll see too many shifts in the rest of the business. So obviously, this is a pretty frustrating situation all around. It's a lot of jobs being lost, a lot of gigs going down the drain, and in the near future at least, it's a lot of opportunities that won't be there. As frustrating as it is to watch go down as a consumer, just imagine the pure turmoil of going through all this in the field as part of the industry itself. I think it's going to take a hot minute before we really sort everything out. But in the immediate future, I think it's important to remember a few things going forward, because it is imperative that these issues keep getting discussed, as long as we follow a few more parameters, right? First things first, no more picking sides, no more fear-mongering over the Boss Baby and Johnny Test or whatever the kids are talking about nowadays. Just no more blaming anyone, really. It's nobody else's fault other than Netflix. Anytime you make one of these shows, ideas, or movies a martyr, you're kind of distracting from the true discourse we really need to focus on. We could be tackling corporate greed, but you're too busy wilding out over this meme from episode 6 of the Johnny Test reboot, and nobody's talking about anything real anymore. It's kind of nuts because it doesn't just seem like fans are getting in on it. There's a lot of vitriol being slung in certain directions, and most of it's not really warranted. This probably leads pretty well into my next point, which would basically be to keep the animators in your thoughts. I mean, for real. They go through it all the time. This is not the first time something like this has happened. It will not be the last. Things like this happen week to week in the industry, month to month. It's all exploitative garbage, and it's preventing a lot of good people from putting food on the table and taking care of their kids. their pets, their futures. This business is a lot different from how it was 30 or 40 years ago. In some ways, for the better, in a lot of ways, not so much. I tried to compile a list of all of the dumb shit they've had to go through over the course of the current situation. A lot of it kind of just boiled down to general production issues and lack of benefits and pay and all those non-important things. But the stuff that remained was still pretty bad. I mean, working from home, adapting to technological struggles, emotional struggles, trying to get teams back on track, following the development of the first few movies and TV series finish during the course of this whole situation, maybe even starting during mass lockdown. Animators were really the only ones that still had consistent work. Obviously, live action wasn't doing so well early 2020. So the union told all the live action writers to just do some cartoon writing for a few months. I promise you'll be back on your regularly scheduled sitcoms in a moment, which probably took quite a few jobs away from talented and qualified animation writers and other professionals that could have done that job probably 5 times better. Let's be real here. There's been a lot of smaller projects and things that have been announced and discussed and probably just don't sit well with the general community at this current moment. Obviously, you're privy to the lovely little bit at the Oscars wherein animation was given a glowing review. All 3 of these are literally Disney princesses, by the way. I just wanted to point that out. The timeline of the whole union situation is fascinating. This has been going on for close to a year, right? I wanted to lay out the timeline because it's actually crazy. So every 3 years, they usually renegotiate their contracts. Mid-2021 was supposed to be when the Animation Guild specifically was supposed to start negotiations. Now, the current contract, the last one that had run out last year, was supposed to run up until the end of July. It was extended until the end of October because IATSE itself was still tussling to get a deal together. So they were supposed to start renegotiating in June. Realistically, they didn't start until the tail end of November, early December. And they've been in negotiations, well now it's basically May. So it's been 5 or 6 months, closing in on a full year since they would have normally started negotiations. And of course, the people that are negotiating on their behalf have probably been preparing for this since early 2021, if not before that. So needless to say, there's been a lot of fuck shit going on. You know, it's been a pretty wild ride. And while there is a big community of people that haven't had time to really express themselves, there are quite a few that took the opportunity to express their displeasure over the past 2 years, and probably before that. Things will definitely get better. People will definitely be on the rebound. They will have new experiences and opportunities, but right now, something like this definitely hurts. Financially, emotionally, career-wise, it's just a big mess. And I think it's important to underscore the empathy that we can offer, not only because events like this are kind of nuts, but also because they've really been going through a lot of turmoil to fulfill their childhood passions and hold up careers that they've been building for decades and decades. This is a genuine struggle for a lot of people. It's also important to remember that we are currently living through history. It's a bit difficult to try and figure out what's going to happen next. The standards keep shifting literally every day. You know, in theory, it's probably extra difficult to try and judge history that you're still currently living through and is developing right before your very eyes. So let's not go too crazy with all the conspiracy theories. Realistically speaking, something like this could swing everything in a whole different direction. Everything is quite uncertain at the moment. It's important to try and rally around these people even when they're not currently creating your new favorite cartoon. Because if you have ever labeled yourself as an aspiring storyboard artist or character designer or background artist or whatever have you, they're fighting for your rights as much as their own. Offer a little more respect, huh? A little more reverence. So where do we go from here? Well, like I said, it's pretty difficult to try and divine that early, but a lot of the same things that you probably should have been doing before still apply. Support your favorite industry creators any way you know how. And that's not just limited to the American landscape, too. Look beyond your borders. Expand your horizons. There's like a new 2D film that comes out every year in Europe. There's so many talented creators over there that rarely do get an opportunity to shine. They shouldn't be left out of this. This is important for them too. I know this can be a little hard for us sometimes, but it's also important to stay on top of the right information at the right time. Important to read sometimes, every once in a while. Just turn a little page, okay? I don't care if it's the Communist Manifesto or Goodnight Moon. Just get to reading, get to consuming knowledge, pure information. In between seasons and during really bad hiatuses, you could be studying character design or something. What are you waiting for? Get out there. Go read any one of Loomis's books. And above all, I would say that it is of the utmost importance for us to be reasonable, stay calm. It is valid to feel all types of ways about the situation. It's valid to be frustrated, it's valid to be upset. Just make sure you channel that energy into something constructive. It's very easy to feel like you don't have a say in the matter, or your input would not factor into absolutely anything. And in a lot of ways, you'd be correct, because I don't think any one of us or a collective could magically bring any of these projects back to life. But yeah, I mean, this is a developing story. There's gonna be details that are added on week to week, month to month. And while it is a painful situation to have to revisit, it's more important now than ever to thoroughly revisit it. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I had to say. Like, comment, subscribe, eat your vegetables, stay in school, and for the love of God, leave Boss Baby alone. He's suffered enough. You can't cancel a literal infant like this.
I wish I'd never met you.
I wish you'd never been born!